So the federal budget came out on Tuesday, and as we know, it was a budget aimed at giving relief in the cost of living crisis, which everyone needs a little bit of a cost of living help at the moment. But there were also some changes made to superannuation, and we have on the line an expert in all things superannuation, Susan O'Connor from Susan O'Connor Accounting. Susan, thank you for joining me.
Hi, Sally. Thank you very much for having me on your show.
My pleasure. So, Susan, could you just run us through what promises have been made regarding superannuation in this year's federal budget?
Well, Sally, it was actually a very quiet night in the world of superannuation, which is something that we do love in the budget. We actually don't like the government to tinker around too much with superannuation, for the reason that we do want great certainty in superannuation, because we want people to have confidence in putting away money for superannuation and have confidence that, you know, it's going to be there when they retire. So we don't want them to play around too much with superannuation. So from that point of view, it was a great budget that we didn't see too many changes. So there wasn't too much news. There was only really a couple of things. One was they're bringing in a new tax where they're going to tax basically balances over $3 million. So that's not going to affect a lot of people, although there is some concern over the way that it's going to be taxed, because they are taxing what's basically called unrealised capital gains, which is that money that basically hasn't even been earned yet. So it is a concern the way that it's been brought in, but it's not going to affect a huge number of people.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Probably the main one for your listeners that is a great win is that the government is going to start paying super on paid parental leave, and that's starting on the 1st of July 2025, and that's predominantly going to be a win for women. Now, this is a great win for women because looking back maybe 3 years ago when I looked at the figures, women are still retiring with 47% less super than men.
Wow.
I just looked at the figures last night, and the gap has closed to now 25% less super than men. But it is still a great gender gap between men and women and what they're retiring.
Of course, and I've heard about, obviously similar to the gender pay gap, there's also a superannuation pay gap.
Exactly.
So is this a good strategy to help close that gap?
Yes, it's wonderful. So it will basically mean that women can get up to $4,000 top-up in their super, and it is one of the measures that will look at basically being able to close that gender super gap as well. One of the reasons being that, you know, women do a lot of unpaid work. They take time off to care for their children. Quite often, you know, they're doing casual work. They're just not getting as much super. So this will go a long way to closing that gender super gap.
Yeah, so just clarifying for those listening, it's essentially paying super on parental leave, is that correct?
Yes, it's only the government paid parental leave. Mm-hmm. So it's not if you're working for an employer and they decide to pay you parental leave. That will depend on your arrangements with your private employer, but it is on the government paid parental leave. So that's fantastic. That's starting on the 1st of July 2025.
That's fabulous. And is that something that, is there an end date to that, or is it locked and loaded?
No, that's to start, and that'll be something that's coming in indefinitely. So that's fantastic. Yeah.
Terrific news. And you did mention this before, but in the long run, for parents and young families, I guess this will have quite the impact when they do reach retirement, because as we know, superannuation, it's all about your compound interest. So Yes. So basically anything that we can get into super has a huge compounding effect because of, the accumulation effect of superannuation. So any amount that we can get into, over the longer term, so $4,000 now, is, a lot in the future.
Basically, yeah.
And Susan, you specialise in helping younger people with their self-managed super funds. Can you tell us why it's important to have your super sorted at a young age, especially at university age?
Yeah, so the younger you can basically get invested into your super, it does have that very large accumulating effect. So, anything you can add to your super, basically, will mean that you have more money in retirement. So there's various things that you can do at this young age. Basically, be aware of your super is very important. Be invested into it. Have a look. It's very important not to have multiple accounts, which a lot of people do. You're changing jobs. A lot of people very young have a lot of casual jobs, so they've built up multiple accounts. Do have a look at that and try and consolidate it into one account rather than having multiple, because the more accounts you have, the more fees that are coming out. Also have a look whether you've got unnecessary insurance coming out that you're paying for, because at a very young age, you probably don't have any dependents or any debt that you actually need insurance for. So do have a look whether, you've got insurance coming out and whether that's necessary. So you can have a look at all of those things, and then have a look, super does vary a lot. Some superannuation performs very well, some superannuation doesn't perform very well. So have a look, at how yours is performing. You can choose whatever super plan you want. So, you can certainly roll over from one superannuation fund into another that's performing better, because it does make a big difference by the time you retire, how much super that you've built up. So I did have a quick look. So if you're under 18, your average balance should be $10,000. And if you're so if you're, just to give you an idea, if you're aged between 25 to 29, your average balance should be 25,000.
Yeah, wow. And I think that's something a lot of people don't realise. I know when we spoke earlier, I mentioned to you that I think it was mid last year, I sort of got onto my super, consolidated my accounts, and I guess for me, I didn't quite realise it's also a way of investing your money. So what's the most common misconception or misunderstanding that you hear around the place that young people have about super?
I think it's just the kind of lack of interest about it, that, it's kind of like not their money, because, it's kind of going into into this super fund, and it kind of doesn't belong to them. But it is very much your money. It's your hard-earned money. The employer is required by law to pay, at the moment it's 11%. On the 1st of July 24, it'll go up to 11.5%. So it's a very large chunk of the money that you're earning. The employer is legally required to pay it into a fund of your choice. There's only very specific exemptions that, you don't get a choice. But for most people, we're going to say of your choice into the fund of your choice. The biggest misconception is that, it's basically not something to be interested in. But it is going to be, for most people, the biggest asset that you have when you retire, apart from your family home.
That's huge. And, people, you're not just going to go and tip $10,000 down the drain. So it's sort of the same thing. You may as well get it sorted, get it where it needs to be, get it to a place where it's going to keep consolidating and making more money. And on that, Susan, just to finish up, what can students do immediately, like today, to take those next steps in getting their superannuation sorted?
Yep. So if you go on to MyGov, you can link your super accounts onto MyGov, and you can very quickly have a look at what super accounts you have. If you have multiple accounts, you can then consolidate them into one. Do have a look at the performance, and also do have a look if you have any insurance, so that if you do have valuable insurance, you don't lose it. And if you want to go on to our website, which is www.susanoconnoraccounting.com.au, there is a blog about how to do a health check on your superannuation, so you can read that as well.
That's great. That's a really great resource. And thank you, Susan. Your advice has been invaluable today. So really appreciate your time. And, enjoy.
Thanks very much, Sally. Thanks
Thank you
for having me on. Thank you.